Good morning, Filo.
Morning, Ray.
Thank you for spending some time this morning with us.
Lovely.
I'm going to kick straight in. So how did you come to find yourself on this rhythmical path?
You call it rhythmical path. So, okay, let's try and give you a short version. Uh, I think the rhythmical path has always been in the background somehow, but more as a backstage kind of thing. It's very much in my nature, but I didn't know until later in life. So, in the form of music, I studied contemporary dance. There was rhythmicity in my life. I started to play guitar quite early, writing songs. It's been like a second parallel musical life somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of come to the forefront until very recently, but that's the backdrop. To say that my ambition in life, my vision was to become a psychotherapist, and that was very early on, in my teenage. And so I ended up in UK because of following that vision. Long story, but I came here to pursue that dream, and it remained a dream for a very long time. And I became a humanistic counselor to begin with. I started to work in the NHS and have a little bit of private practice. So time went on, and I stumbled upon a first crisis, life crisis. At first, this was a second, because the first one was the reason why I was here. And this life crisis circumstances and also the work that I was in, and I decided to stop working as a counselor at that time. And I carried on working in the NHS in other roles, but at that point I started to go for piano lessons and singing lessons. Finally, I decided to embrace that in Leeds. At Leeds College of Music as an adult, as a private lessons. And while I was in Leeds, I started to wander into Janto Thornberg shop in Leeds, knock on wood, and bless him, because it's been very important to me. He's no longer with us, but he's us in other ways. And in Janto's shop, I started to see books on working rhythmically with children, for example. I started to do a little bit of that from home, friends' children. And then I saw that he was running West African drumming classes, and I just felt this strong call to join. I modified my work schedule, which was flexible, so that I could go to Leeds once a week in the evening, and have the luxury of having the drums carrying on in my head all night and go straight into work the morning after. So I was there. I got very passionate about that, and I loved the circle, and I loved the things we did with Janton. It got us to play out there, and in the shop he also had a Drum Circle Spirit, Arthur Hall's book.
Yeah.
My attention was drawn to that. And then there was a number of flyers on community drum circles that were running in the area. And that was Steve Hill at the time and Paul Deere. And I asked, what is this? What is a community drum circle? And that's when everything opened up, because he explained to me. And he had been part of bringing Arthur Hall to UK. He put me in touch with Steve Hill and Paul Deere. And Paul was in Ebden Bridge, further away at the time. I lived in East Yorkshire. And I got in touch with Steve Hill. I became his helper. I even bought a pair of elf ears I was wearing when I was helping out in his circle. I loved following him around, and he was a good friend for, a long time. And he taught me the ropes, and occasionally I just did little things. Then I dropped my job in the NHS decided for a radical change, and I moved to Hebden Bridge from East Yorkshire. And as I moved to Hebden Bridge, I started to then go to Paul's classes, West African drumming classes, which I loved. And of course, Paul is a wonderful drum circle facilitator. He was running a monthly community drum circle, which I joined very enthusiastically. So Paul became my mentor. Mm-hmm. Which I loved, Shadows and Light, because he was very encouraging, and encouraging to the point that then, just stop facilitating and say, right, from this point on, I'm not doing anything. It's your turn. You go in and go. Wow. It did me a lot of good, besides terrifying me to begin with. But then I decided to, obviously, the natural progression was to do Arthur Hall's play shop. And so I went to Stratford-on-Avon in 2008. You were there. Yeah. I remember you being there, but our path didn't really cross either or after for a while. And that opened things up for me, just melted something in me. But it didn't become my main thing. So I never, at that point, I didn't run drum circles as a main work. But Paul moved from Hebden Bridge, he moved to Scotland, and I inherited the community drum circle. Okay. And so I started to run it and keep it on with a friend who then also moved away, and he became quite ill after that. But so that folded with the floods in Hebden Bridge. After the floods, the venues changed their rules, and the big floods, we all remember, 2006. And then I realized that rhythmical work was coming my way, that every time I had interrupted what I was doing with therapy, with counseling, or there was a gap, somebody would ask me to do a drum circle, or lead a group, or work rhythmically in some way. So it's just, that's what was there when there was nothing else. Christ number 3, and that's 3 years ago, I just felt then really strongly I needed to change my way of working completely. My direction was changing. I just had to listen. I heard this call within myself. So long preparation to wind down my practice and close my practice as a psychotherapist. Big thing, because it had been all my life I wanted to do that. Meantime, I trained as a body psychotherapist. And so I started to work with movement and body process, and these seemed to bring me closer to working rhythmically and with movement and music. With the closure of the practice, coincidentally and timely, because I was free then, some severe illness happened in my family, and for 2 years I was able to be closer to my family and travel quite a lot because I wasn't working as much. I'd taken a sabbatical, a year off. And then we had some terrible loss. So in all, this called for a radical transformation even more. And I was saying to you at some other time that if a therapist doesn't have a few goes at rebirthing, they're not getting it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was going through this transformation, and that was again when a lot of rhythmical work came my way. I was asked to run some drum circles. I started a regular drum circle I'm still running now. Well, not in lockdown, we haven't been able to, but a group that's gone on for 4 years, and little other projects with special needs and secure units, and it all came in. And I'm looking for it. So, and that's when I realized this really is me. This is me. I just love doing it. And also, I became what I liked to describe as a therapist undercover, because bring those.
I love that.
It's a viewpoint. It's a way of approaching being with people.
Yeah.
The facilitative role that I loved, because I could bring those in, but nobody would think I'm a therapist. And so I was freer. People was freer, but the therapist was there.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, because you've mentioned like Paul and Steve and Arthur and Yanto, what were their influences on you? How did they influence the way you work, and who else has kind of been thrown into the mix?
Oh, there's a lot into the mix. And first of all, as you mentioned them, all those you have interviewed so far.
Mm.
And so Paul, having been also my drum teacher and the mentor, I liked his style of mentorship, encouraging, but also not too softy, so that I wouldn't learn, and I describe Paul as a rhythm harvester. I love his facilitative style because the rhythm is there and it seems to gather it all up, and it goes all into this big stream. It becomes a river and it moves in different ways. I just love that. And with his hat. And Jane Bentley to me is a magical woman. She's wonderfully expressive in her gestures
Mm.
and her mimicry. And also she seems to press magic buttons. Music happens, it pops up everywhere. Joe Laughlin, who you have interviewed, his humor is fantastic. There's a depth and just a wickedness in the humor at the same time that are just so warm with people, so with people. Steve Hill was very playful, but he was really elvish, in his style, and the playfulness he brought back for me. And I had to mention the debt of gratitude to Yanto as a drum teacher and as a gate opener for the drum circles. I'll be forever grateful, and for the first West African drum I've ever had.
Mm.
Tom Morley, who I don't see strictly as a drum circle facilitator, really, but having been involved in his work some time, and he's been part of the We Drum gatherings we were doing with Paul in Wiston. We did one in Ireland with Debbie. Wonderful exchange between all of us who work in this field. Tom has the ability to turn something very simple into something spectacular. And it's not so much the show that happens at the end, it's the process that I have seen, I witnessed.
Mm.
You don't need much.
No.
Creativity can become, in the hands of people's creativity, just become spectacular and beautiful.
Yeah, no.
And there's my inspirations in the therapy field, which is to do with process, with going with the process, and there's Carl Jung and process psychology, Arnold Mindell.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be guided by the flow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the term rhythm harvesters, and I love the fact that, I see Paul as a rhythm harvester as well, but not just within the circle, but almost a harvester of rhythmical people.
Yes.
He draws rhythmical people to him, and he kind of harvests them, then sends them out into the world and to the community.
Yeah, beautiful image. Yes,
It is, and I think it's a great strength of his, not just within the circle, but outside the circle as well. Who do you think you were when you started on this journey, and compared to who you are now? How do you feel you've changed?
Before saying that, I need to say what's not changed, because I feel there is a kind of core, that's me, that's not changed, and it's what I believe in, and also that I will never stop having that therapist kind of nature in me, because that nature came before I chose to be a therapist, because it fitted that way of being, and the belief that there is creativity and potential, and there is healing waiting to happen, that it's possible. I believe in transformative power of being with people. So that's not changed. But what's changed is that I've slowed down. I slowed right down. I've gone into the process much more. I don't feel the urge to intervene all the time, to plan all the moves. I'll have a loose plan. I will have things that I can bring in. But before I was much more anxious, And so I needed to have a lot of structure prepared, and I didn't let things unfold as much. I was just stepping in much sooner. Now, the pleasure of just spaciously um, letting things manifest themselves. There's rhythm there already. There are dynamics, there are hints that want to manifest, and it's so much more delicious to just be there and let it sing to you, let it tap on your shoulder, and what you do is amplify it. And
Do you find yourself holding yourself in check sometimes before saying, I mean, I tend to find, I'll own this. I tend to find some of the time that I'm so desperate to get in there because something's not quite right. And I have to hold myself in check and go, just let it go, let it flow, see what happens.
I do, yes, I need to do that. I will probably always need to do that because it's part of my nature. Um, there is a trait, there's a feature in my character that tends to want to step in a bit, that tiny bit sooner.
Yeah.
Just those few seconds too soon. Just
Yeah.
something would have happened by its own accord anyway. And I learned that in life and through rhythm work. And I have to say that rhythm work has taught me a lot about how to deal with life in that way too.
Tell
So,
me more.
well, this thing about, well, wait, hang in there just a few seconds longer, something will happen.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Don't preempt things in the anxiety of worrying that it won't happen unless I do something about it,
Mm.
or it will go wrong unless I step into this.
Mm.
Not only is kinder on myself not to do that,
Yeah.
and it lets me enjoy the whole thing, the beauty of what's unfolding there more, but um, it allows me to enjoy the surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surprise is something that I couldn't have predicted or planned. It will come to me in ways that I wouldn't have anticipated because I don't know everything. I don't know everything about what's there and what the possibilities are. So it's this other little thing that I always say to myself, that the best plans are the plans that don't go to plan. It's when
Yeah.
you have a plan because you need a sense of direction, and for ourselves, and because there's some kind of goal or vision that we're following. Um, but nothing I've ever done, and that's really felt fulfilling, has come from my plan as it was.
Mm.
Often come from the plan not quite being going right, and having to find other routes. It's
Yeah.
water-like, it's river-like. You gotta, because of having to go this other way, I've discovered landscapes I wouldn't have known are there,
Yeah. No,
and met
absolutely.
I wouldn't have met. So possibilities, you just have to leave them alone.
And I think we've touched on this before, that I have plans because I like plans because they help me deal with my anxiety. But what I really like also is letting go of the plan. I have my clipboard. I will sit for a couple of hours before leaving and I'll a rough idea of, things. And then I'll either leave it in my van, or you'll normally leave it in my van, but it's helped me just kind of focus but it's not rigid.
No, it's a safety net.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And for the group as well, because I have moment of blank when I think, what am I doing? What am I doing now? And I let it go on a bit longer because nothing's coming. I can't think. But I think the group as a body, as a rhythmical body, goes through blanks where they're kind of rolling on, but we're running out of ideas. I think also for the group, what might be the group panic, the sum of the anxieties of those who are sat around, of the uncertainties. They don't know unless they've done it before, they don't quite know how this works. Uh, a plan is useful. Structure is a container. But it's so wonderful to discover that if you let it flow, you just find things that you didn't know were findable.
Yeah. Do you find that that's the major shift in your facilitation style, that kind of letting go?
Absolutely. And those who have known me at the beginning, and Paul, and even Jane, and my peers at the We Drums gathering, um, know that
Mm.
time how I was preoccupied with the skill, with what I should do. I think probably we all go through that stage when we begin anyway, but my stage lasted a long time. And that's why those gatherings were wonderful. But the loosening up happened through life.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
realized what a parallel there was between my life circumstances and the event that unfolded, especially in these past 3 years, 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the life of a rhythmical group, and the nature of rhythm making, because it's so primal to us, it's so fundamental to our embodied physical nature that it's got an intelligence of its own.
There's almost like a journey of a facilitator. You know, sometimes when we go on the training, they talk about the journey of the community circle. There's almost like a journey of the facilitator where you start with this, everything is crowded in your head and you're trying to do everything. So you get to many years, or if you're really good, many months down the road where actually you can just let it go and let it flourish and let it develop. And actually you spend more time out of the way. You've just kind of created a space and brought the drums and just let it go.
Yeah, and getting out of the way to begin with, I thought was a sign of lack of skill at the beginning. If I got out of the way, I felt that I was um, cocking out. Yeah, I was chickening out. It was just, but now I see what that really means.
Mm.
And I always go back to same as the body intelligence. Now I apologize to mentioning body all the time. I actually shouldn't apologize really, but I then started last year training in dance and somatic well-being, and that's amplified my trust in the fact that there is an intelligence here in our natural embodied being, and that includes rhythm. There's something that left to itself and supported into thriving, and we do that as therapists, hopefully, um, will find its way and will create naturally, will be naturally creative, will make things happen, and we will connect and relate.
Mm.
So,
What do you think are your particular strengths as a facilitator when you pull all of this together?
well, it's the relational side of things, I guess. When you know this, so when I first heard that you were asking the question about people's uniqueness, what's your unique feature? I got terrified. How am I going to answer that? I don't think I thought about it before I heard you ask that question, and realized that there is, for me, there's a focus on the relational aspect, which means how do people relate with each other and how they're relating to me? How do they relate to themselves with this, while they're making rhythm, with this instrument in this situation? And I feel that I tend to encourage um, the connectivity of the group and the people with themselves as
Mm.
as with each other. Also, I feel there's something about my roots. Probably there is a cultural streak in me. There's a certain energy I feel that I might bring. Um, I don't quite know exactly what that was, but I think from my accent to the gestures that I do, something is there that's there's got an energy that tends to um, push things on a bit. And also, more recently, I think I just over time started to use more of the other channels of rhythmical expression. So yes, there are instruments, but I encourage people to move,
Okay.
movement, to use voice, to use to realize, to find where the rhythm is everywhere else. Um, and yeah, this is recent discovery. I thank you for that question, because I think it's really important for us to know that we have our.
No, no worries. Do you feel there are parts of your kind of facilitation style or the way you are within a rhythmical experience that needs developing?
Yes, with this one, I have no doubt. It's getting better, but I've never been very good at creating, inventing games, or new tools to introduce in a group, for example, um, for playing, for to encourage people to find new ways of using rhythm or making rhythm. I don't seem to be very inventive in that way. I seem to rather go with what I've got, uh, or what the group brings, what people bring,
Mm.
and support that and amplify those things or modulate those things. That kind of inventiveness, which, for example, Jane has in a beautiful way,
Yeah.
um, I don't seem to have. It's getting better. It's improving. With lockdown, I kind of had to, because working online is a different story.
Yeah, I tend to think we touched on this previously. That part of us, which I think is really important, is that drive to continually look to develop. You know, as counsellors, we look to develop through our continual professional development. I think it's important that we do that as facilitators as well. Otherwise, we stay stale, we stay still, and I think there's a lot of, for some of us, there's a lot of pressure to keep dragging in games, developing stuff. I think that's quite positive. Well, I do anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I do, and for the reasons we said before, because it is useful to have um, tools up your sleeve, games, and to adapt to the situation, to the kind of people that you're with, and also to what the group is there for. Not every group gathers for the same reasons.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Training that's freedom for recovery, that's meant to provide a kind of a different angle. You know, it's um, how do you work to that purpose so that people can
Yeah.
find a ways to express and understand their emotions and communicate.
I think for me, it was that kind of when I first did the Arthur course with you in 2008. Then I was looking for something else. There was a hunger for it. So then I went and did some work with Barry Wakefield. And then I was looking for even more stuff that I could try and drag on. Then I went and did with the rhythm, the health rhythms with Christine Stevens and Barry Bittman. And then I did rhythm to recovery. So it's always what's next? What's next? Move on, move on. Where can I draw tools and skills and stuff like that? There's
Yeah,
always a hunger. Well, for me anyway, there's always a hunger.
yeah. I don't seem to have that hunger. You see, my hunger is to find out about different styles.
Yeah,
Um, you could say personality styles of being in a circle or out of it, or even in one-to-one work. I know there are people who do one-to-one rhythmical work, like Debbie does some of that, sessions with individuals. Um, I'm after styles and the ways, again, what's the relational style here that I can use?
yeah.
I relate to these people in rhythm differently so that we discover something else. We explore things that hadn't been explored before.
And I think that underpins all of it. For me personally, I think that underpins everything, the whole relational. You may have that knowledge, you may have um, that desire, those skills, those games and stuff like that. But if you're missing that little bit of a relational connection or being able to make that relational connection, there's something missing. There's always something missing. I think the relational is really a solid foundation for what we do.
I think it is, and that's why I just took to it like a dog to the water, and I did it. I really like that aspect. Is the beauty that happens that you
Yeah.
see in front of you.
This is probably one of my favorite questions that I ask the people that I've been chatting to, Philo. How do you go about creating a safe space?
Well, I always begin with myself, and I did that in therapy as I do this with if I'm working with a group, and within what's possible. I need to have a sense of safety myself. So, in how I set up the environment, who do I liaise with, who are my helpers, what's the container like? And so, if I feel that I'm okay in this container enough, because there are also edges. Sometimes you work in culture within cultures that are a bit edgy to maybe how you are, and you can't always feel completely comfortable. But So container, within possible, I would try and set up so that I'm okay in it. And once I'm okay in it, I feel that mostly I make sure that I make a direct contact with each member of the group if I am with the group, that they feel that I notice them individually, and they all matter. Um, I will do what we do again, flipping therapists, we do check-in, personal development groups, um, depending on where, if I work in a festival or I'm in the square here, I won't do that. But when it's a more intimate group and a more kind of a group that's about our health, our well-being, I'll encourage people to do a little check-in. So just simple things like to say their name and either how they are at that particular moment in time, few words, or why have they come to the circle? Why did they want to do this? And then we go and we rumble for each of them each time they've said something. It personalizes things and so that people feel welcome. Stressing from the beginning to help with the anxiety that might be that this is not a lesson, it's not about getting it right. I'm not a teacher and they're not there for me. They're there to explore and find out their own beautiful creativity and that it will happen. And I'm there to encourage them, not to criticize. And this is repeated and demonstrated throughout the circle at several points because it's quite it's what we go into a circle with. Is the fear that this is, I don't have any rhythm, I don't have a sense of rhythm, I can't drum, I don't know how to do this, and what if I get it wrong? And what do you want from me? What's expected of me here? So yeah, I encourage them to also connect with each other, so to know each other by name possibly, and witness each other in a positive way.
And how do you read the group as these kind of sessions develop? Either in the community, in the square, or in groups that are slightly more intimate? How do you kind of read what's going on?
Well, they're all quite different, but generally there's something about the quality of the play, the sound that's coming out, that's they may be, you may notice things. I may notice that there is tension. I may notice there's uncertainty, or notice that there is, or that there are those who actually come banging in. Those that are on the edges or almost tend to disappear. Those dynamics are everywhere, whether it's a big group, public group, or a small intimate place. But also people's expression, the expression on their face, how they again seem to be relating to the instrument or the person next to them, or the way they look at me, how they sit in the circle. But then, to me, going back to my usual basis of base, I should call it, of how I yeah, how I measure what might be going on. I see the group as a body. So this is a body, it's a rhythmical body. There's a muscle tone to it. There are zones where there's a bit less resources, there's a weakness, there's a strength, there's things might need supporting in rebalancing, distributing differently. It's energy reading. It's kind of it's keeping an ear and an eye on what might need supporting, and what voice might want to emerge, what needs help to change direction,
Yeah.
speed up.
We are constantly in a state of kind of alertness or awareness. Awareness, I think, is a better word to use.
Yes, yeah, it's a version of the radar that we were taught about to begin with. In the end, I feel we always go back to where we started from, but in a different way, in a way that's more conscious, is more and then it's a deliberate choice rather than automatic pilot. It's not default, it's what we've chosen to do.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's also moving out of the automatic pilot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you go back to how we started, at least in our training, we'd just get into the middle of the circle and stand there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just listen, just stand there and feel it. So, and I feel that that's what I've learned to do throughout all of my years of being a therapist is less intervention, less control on the processes, and more about receiving it, being receptive, being a receiver of this process that's saying things. And at the time, it was absolutely terrifying to do that.
Hmm.
And over time, I've gone back to exactly that. And it's absolutely pleasurable. I find it so pleasurable to just wait for it to tell me.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because the word pleasure, I don't think I've heard it in any of the other interviews, and I know everyone experiences it, but I tend to think we lose ourselves in so much of holding that space. We hold the space for people, with it, whether it's 100 or whether it's just the two of you. We hold that space, and sometimes that can be such an intense experience. Maybe we forget some of the pleasure that's actually going on for you and for them there as well.
Yeah, do you know, for me, it's a new word as well. And it comes from the somatic practices that I've been learning about. And there are some particular teachers, specific teachers that I follow that I love, who use these words that are very um, uh, almost food related. You know, it's oh, this is delicious. This is life. It's pleasurable. It's to fall into your body and from there feel secure enough there, you know, to just receive what's going on and say, oh, I'll tap into this. Or this maybe wants to say a bit more. This wants to be helped kind of find a way of coming through. This one might need a role because it's just banging about and doesn't know what place they might occupy. That creates the overall harmony.
I love that kind of pleasure and deliciousness of what we do. Yeah, I need to hold that pleasure and deliciousness a lot more, I think, when we finally get to start drumming again. Philo, I just want to touch on something else. There's a huge amount of, I think there's something like 21 research papers out there looking at the benefits of drumming, the benefits of rhythm. What is your kind of direct experience with some of the groups that you've worked with that, you know, yes, this works. I'm seeing this work.
Um, there's a long list of
Good.
experience, and we don't have enough time for all of it. But I'll give you a few examples that really have stayed with me, and so from very simple things like those who come in and say, I come with my friend. This is not really my thing, but I'll give it to go." And the next time they bought their own drum, and they've
Yeah.
come in with this drum. And there are those, like there's a lady I love who's been in several groups who will get attached to a particular drum and particular percussion, and that becomes her voice. You know, this is how I speak in the group. This is how I make my music, create my thing. She's so happy with those when she's with those. There was an instance in secure unit. It was a mental health secure unit, um, where all support workers were all sat around the edges because they kind of had a double role, also being kind of security guards, and they looked like that. So the group is here in the middle, and at some point towards the end, when there was a lot more fluidity and warmth, everybody was freer. Somebody just came to me sheepishly and said, "Could I distribute some of the little percussion with them around the edges?" So you wanted to involve them. And
Yeah.
I had a kind of an eye contact with some of the others, and they said, "Yes, go ahead." And I just actually said, "Yeah, absolutely, just go ahead." And he went round while everyone was drumming, distributing this percussion with a big smile on his face. And I said this before, the joy, sheer joy of the group, and I'm moved describing it. I cried at the end of it. Just filled the room and just hit the roof. Nothing went out of control or chaotic, or it was just joy, that solid joy. We're all here. We're all here together. And we're all the same.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
I our drumming group, we are all the same. We all can play. The support workers loved it as well. They had their moment of play. Very moved by a lady in a group that I ran for people with Alzheimer that were accompanied by some members of the family. And the lady sat right next to me. She was with her husband, who was really terrified because just couldn't orient herself. She was quite scared. So she gradually started to get into it. And this leadership came out that we hadn't anticipated. This kind of, she was so secure in a rhythm and engaging with everybody else. And we gave her a role. We made her into, we elected it to be orchestra director.
Wow.
I won't say her name, but we said, all right, well, so you tell us now what we're doing next. And she was going with it and directing us. So this woman, I'm not saying these are miracles, I'm saying there's something about feeling equal to everyone else, to not feel under the pressure to perform or please somebody, respond to someone's expectation. And the rhythm itself that regulates people's energy. I feel that if they need to calm down, they will, and relax. And those that need a bit of a boost of vitality will find it. There is a regulation and the connecting to the others. And also I will add, again, from my movement practice, is the possibility of being witnessed in a positive way, not in the critical way we might have been witnessed as we grew up. To be witnessed in a positive way that tells them I exist, I am as worthy as everybody else here, and I can contribute, and I can I can do things.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So it's no miracle. It's
No.
naturally are if we're given the conditions, if we have the conditions to free our
No, I'm with you 100%. I just want to touch on how do you see your role in a session? We've talked about facilitation styles. How do you see your role in a session? Is it kind of the well-being of the group, individuals, release, providing skills? How do you see your role as a kind of the sessions sort of start off and develop?
There is a bit of all of that. There will be aspects that I tend to engage with more, maybe because of who I am. It's not so much the providing skills, but there is some of that because some people have never touched the drum before. And so there is some of it, especially if sometimes the group might want to prepare a piece, they might want to create a piece, they might want to sing a song and do rhythm with it. There is an element of skill and just to how to hit some of the drums, how to not to hurt yourself, and all those other things, but there isn't much of that. My role, I feel, is that of open up possibilities for people. So to show and model that it can be done, that we all have rhythm in ourselves. My focus is on the possibility for transformation that can happen for them. Change. I'm a change junkie. I like seeing change happen. And yes, well-being, but well-being comes from it. It comes from feeling more whole, freer, and more fluid, and capable of creating with others.
Do you find with the various different groups that you work with that you have to kind of change your role in the session? the role of you as a community facilitator in the square to you working in a psych unit. Do you find your role varies, or is it basically the same with just a few tweaks?
Um, I'd have to I'd have to notice that a bit more carefully, but I would say that there's something fundamental that feels the same in all these environments. In terms of the energy that I feel I bring, there is a style of how I do things. But yes, the environment has an influence. I do adapt to the environment to some extent, because the cultures of the different environments are different, and also their goal is different. There's the intention around the group is different. So maybe the group that gathers for mental health purposes isn't the same group that's in the square at a festival, where people come and go, they're passing by, they might stop shyly, and you just hand them a shaker. It's very different in terms of what the group intention is.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Sometimes people forget that kind of thing, is the fact that there's a culture that sits behind some of these groups. There's an intention there as well, and to have cognizance of all of that as you're kind of with the group, and an awareness as well.
Yeah, there are things that certain environments allow and others don't. They got rules, those environments, even if they leave a degree of freedom around what we do, and they will also, you find that the service manager they're all cautious. I don't know, I'm doing sat in the circle with you all, but later on it'll be just playing his drum, and all that. So the change will happen there too. But there are certain implicit or explicit rules in different environments, and also groups have different channels for communicating, and of course, the different levels of abilities and ways in which people relate or are able to relate, and the sensory channels that they use will be different.
Do you feel yourself focusing on a session with the experience of the group, the music or the rhythm, or an experience of individuals, participation, inclusiveness, or all of those?
Well, all of those, not at the same time, though. And overall, I tend to hear what the whole group, the voice of the whole group, has a co-created kind of voice. But as a person, as a personality trait, I tend to then connect to each member of the group and find and try and see who they are there.
Yeah.
And who they are and what they might be asking for, or what might be waiting to be heard, or maybe they want to be a bit more invisible, maybe they want to come more into the center, maybe they need a role in the group to be able to express themselves and feel that there is and that they fit in, there is a purpose in their group. Some they were called by afterwards in the feedback the very enthusiastic drummer, and what happened for them was that the enthusiasm was channeled into offering them a spot, like in the bricks they had their solo moment, and then they would go back into the group, and so that created a cycle, a rhythm for them that meant the group now recognized them as their solo player, and they were no longer a disruptor. There's a place for that.
Yeah, and this is what the purpose of some of these kind of conversations is that people understand that there's such a breadth of skills that facilitators bring into these kind of circles, and they're constantly working and aware and working in your favor, and there's relational stuff going on, there's instrumental stuff going on. It's just it's a massive pool of activity and intensity and passion and pleasure and deliciousness, and it's not just turning up with a van full of drums.
No.
But then again, sometimes it is just turning up with a van full of drums, if you know what I mean.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes you don't even need all those drums.
No, No, I get that absolutely.
Everybody wants the big drum. You might not have enough of the big drums. You've got small ones here, and everyone wants the same ones. But then people can use their bodies. They can discover rhythm in all sorts of different ways, and the lacquer drums can instigate a game of passing on that drum everybody wants. There's all that. But yeah, sometimes it is about just turning up with the drums because the situation is already there. Festivals, or I pond there because the square is there in Upton Bridge where we've done a few of these things. You just put the drums there and somehow
Magic occurs.
and people play.
Yeah, yeah. We're kind of coming to my last question, sadly.
Yes.
Um, when you finished your circle and you've packed all your drums away, they've gone into the back of the van or the car and the doors are shut and you sat in the van, you turn the ignition and then off you drive. What do you hope you've left behind?
Um, I I hope to have left behind an open gateway. I hope that what we've done, the experience that we've had, has opened a gateway for people to walk through or not. They will make their choice to something that they need to find, they want to find in themselves, um, with others, with music. It is. I'll say it's none of my business for me to decide what it is that they might need.
Mm,
And this is another thing that moves me deeply when I say it. I do hope when I get in the van that the gate has been opened and then they will be able to walk through
wow,
and to.
awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning, Philo. I really, really appreciate it. That was absolutely delightful. Thank you. It was a pleasure and delicious.
There you go.
Thank you so much.